Jai Shri Ram, everyone. Welcome to another session of Indic Studies Toronto. Today, the topic is Truths and Myths in the Ramayan. This presentation explores the Ramayan with a factual and an interpretive viewpoint. Our speaker today is Parag Bhalerao ji, who has been on this platform before and he has presented. Parag ji is fascinated by spirituality and loves to study its depth. He is inspired by various writings of Dr. P.V. Vartak and he took an initiative to explore scientific knowledge in various scriptures. Parag ji has authored many books and he has a degree in science and works in IT industry in the USA. Namaste Parag ji, welcome to our show and please continue.
Namaste. Good morning, good evening. I know we have a global crowd, so depending on your time zone, greetings to all of you. It is very exciting to see you all here, and I want to thank you, Indic Studies channel, for this opportunity for all of us to get together, meet up, and discuss some of the topics. Before I start my talk, I just want to put out a disclaimer. What we are going to discuss today, some of the topics you might feel, for lack of better words, little bit offended, especially the topics that are very close to our heart from our Shraddha, our devotion, our bhakti perspective. And we will discuss some of those areas and try to understand what was the truth versus what stories that we know. My intention is not to hurt anybody. My intention is not to disrespect anybody's devotion or love to Lord Ram or any of the characters in Ramayana, but just bring out some factual stories or factual information. Also, as all of us know, Ramayana is a epic. It's a huge poem or huge history text. I don't claim to know everything about every aspect of Ramayana. So we'll focus on some key stories or key parts which are misinterpreted or modified over the original stories or original itihasa. And that is going to be our focus. Now, one more thing we want to understand, that Ramayana is called Itihasa Grantha. Itihasa literally means this is exactly how it happened. So this Grantha, this text, is fact-based, factual reporting of series of events. So it is not myth. Lot of times the history becomes ancient and the ancient becomes myth. And we start calling this as a mythology or mythology, which is not the case, definitely in case of Ramayana. So we will start with some of the background or some of the basics. Ramayana, uh, will understand little bit about Maharshi Valmiki, and then we will go through some of the aspects or stories that are described in Ramayana, and those are also popular in our society, and see how things actually evolved. If I ask you who wrote Ramayana, all of us know Maharshi Valmiki or Valmiki Muni, sage Valmiki, whatever words we want to use. But Maharshi Valmiki is the sage who wrote Ramayana. Now, beyond that, if we ask about Maharshi Valmiki, we have heard different versions of the story, but all the versions boil down to a story which is something like he was a dacoit, he was a robber who used to walk in the jungles and rob the travelers who were passing through the jungle. And one day, uh, Maharshi Narad was passing through the jungle, and this dacoit, this robber stopped him and asked to give everything that he has. And Narad Muni said, I don't have anything. But then he gave him some lecture, explained him why you're doing this. This is not good. He said, I'm doing it for my family. And Narad Muni said, if they are if they are taking part of what you earn this way, are they willing to own your papa, your sins? And go check with them. So he checks with them, and they all refuse to partake in his sins. And then Narad Muni asks him to do penance, and then he converts into a sage. That's a very popular story that we have heard. If you look at any historic references, there is no such evidence of such story being true. Now, one more aspect, one more, so to say, disclaimer. Lot of these stories, they have some purpose, right? So they teach us something, and we'll see for different stories what they potentially teach us. But that does not make it history. That does not make it itihas. That does not mean it really happened. So Maharshi Valmiki, in different parts of the country, this story is described, or Maharshi Valmiki is named by different or identified by different names. You might have heard Ratnakar or Angulimal or Valyakoi in Maharashtra regions and so on. So there are some uh, followers of Maharshi Valmiki, and they did extensive research, and they did not stop there. They actually filed a court case, presented all the evidences, and they proved that before 9th century, there was no record, no mention about Maharshi Valmiki being a dacoit. And the court looked at all the evidences and agreed to that. So technically, today, if you call Maharshi Valmiki being a dacoit or a goon or whatever, it's a offense. It's a legal offense. Of course, we won't get into that. But even in Ramayana itself, everywhere Valmiki Muni is referred as Muni, Maharshi, Bhagwan Valmiki, Valmiki Rishi, so on and so forth. So he is always addressed in very, very respectful manner. Also, we have to understand that if you look at any of the sages, they were very honest and truthful. They never hid anything about their own selves or their own past or their own life or anything. Even if you see Maharishi Vyas for that matter, right? They honestly told everything about their past, their birth, their parents, and so on and so forth. And there is no mention anywhere about Maharshi Valmiki being a dacoit. We don't find too many references about his past, but in Mahabharata, there is a mention about Maharshi Valmiki, and there it clearly says that he is descendant of Maharshi Bhrigu, and he is part of Bhrigu lineage or Bhargava Gotra. So this is one important misunderstanding that we have about past of Maharshi Valmiki, who wrote Ramayana. Now, anytime we refer to Ramayana as a history text, as a Itihasa Grantha, we have to only look at Valmiki Ramayana. Maharshi Valmiki and Prabhu Ram were there on the earth at the same time. They have met each other, they have spent time with each other. As you know, Mata Sita had spent significant time in Maharshi Valmiki's ashram, and that is how Maharshi Valmiki got to know all the facts or all the truths, all the stories, and that is how he wrote that epic. But beyond Valmiki Ramayana, there are so many other Ramayans. And depending on the region where you are, you might be familiar with one or more of these Ramayans, right? We know Tulsi Ramayana is very famous. If you are from south, then Kamba Ramayan is very famous. Ramcharitmanas or Tulsi Ramayan, that is very famous. So there are so many different versions. In Maharashtra, you might have heard beautiful composition called Gita Ramayan. Now, there is a big difference between Valmiki Ramayan and all these other Ramayans. All these other Ramayans are based on key narration, key stories from Valmiki Ramayana. But all the other Ramayans are written by devotees of Prabhu Ram. So when you are a devotee, you try to exaggerate something. You try to add devotion aspects more and more. You want to paint your beloved God in a very beautiful manner, or a big manner, or a almighty manner. So you tend to exaggerate certain things, right? So all these other poets, so to say, or people who wrote different versions or different flavors, those were more of a devotees, and they tried to articulate their vision, their devotion, their bhakti, their love towards Lord Ram in their texts. So those texts, even though the core part of the story is pretty similar, there are a lot of deviations, exaggerations, or added perspectives, added stories from their own thinking or their own devotion. So whenever we look at Valmiki Ramayana as a Itihasa Grantha, as a reference text for historic references, we should strictly look at Valmiki Ramayana. But if you look at it from a devotional text perspective, yes, then we can refer to any of the Ramayans that we are familiar with or that we want. These are some popular texts or versions I have mentioned here, but there are many more. There are a lot of versions, lot of variations in Ramayana Grantha itself. With that, we'll move on to next topic, which is who was the father of Prabhu Ramchandra. And there is always a discussion, you must have heard, that King Dasharath, who was father of Prabhu Ramchandra ji, he lived for more than 60,000 years. And then there are people who, uh, start big debate, big argument that, yeah, back in those days, the human life was much longer than today. And, the time span of the yugas and all kinds of references they give and make it sound very convincing. They're part of the argument. But if we'll do a very practical, scientific, and open minded study, we know that it is not possible for a human to live 60,000 plus years. It's not true. But then you will find a reference in Ramayana itself where Dasharatha says, it has been 60,000 years, and after that I became father. This happens when Maharshi Vishwamitra comes to Dasharath and he wants to take Ram away with him and away from Dasharath. And that's when Dasharath says, hey, after 60,000 years, I became father. I got this son. Give me time to enjoy with him, be a good father to him. Don't take him away from me right now. And that is the context where Dasharath says this, Shashti Varsha Sahasrani, 60, Shashti, and Sahasra is 1,000. Now, what happens is in many texts, we try to take meaning of certain words in most common manner. So different words have multiple meanings, and we tend to take the most commonly used or applied meaning of that word or that text. So word sahasra does not mean just 1,000. It means a large number. Okay. So when you say 1,000, it means, okay, there is a extended period, there is a large period or large number, large count. That's what sahasra means. And one of the meanings of sahasra is 1,000. So this is a screenshot from a dictionary where you will see that Sahasra has multiple meanings. And the second meaning there, if you see, it is a very large number. That's all it really means. Or even there is, it also means infinite and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different meanings, and people take the literal meaning as thousand equal to sahasra equal to thousand, and they try to interpret this as 60,000 years, which is not the case. Now, why did he say this? What is the context? Again, we all know that in his young age, King Dasharath accidentally killed Shravan. And then Shravan's blind parents cursed him. They gave him a sharp that you killed our son. Now we can't live without our son. And we are going to die. But we are cursing you that you will also die due to separation from your kids. So when he became king, when Dasharath became king, and as he grew, he knew that I'm going to die because of separation from my kids. So one of the possibilities is he did not want to die at young age, so he delayed having kids. But maybe at around 60, he thought, okay, now I'm old enough. Also, I have to think of, who will be the king after me. So I need to have kids. All those things he probably thought. And at age of around 60, he said, okay, let me have kids now. And I'll spend a few years with my kids. And after that, if I die, it's okay. Now, this is a age where I have to think of other things also. And that's probably why he waited up to age 60 or around 60, and then he had kids. So that is the reference here. He's saying after 60 years I have become father. So don't take my kids away from me. Then we know the Vishwamitra ji took Ram and Lakshman with him, and as they were passing through a jungle, uh, Maharshi Vishwamitra took him to a place which looked like a ashram, right? And Prabhu Ramchandra ji saw that and he asked Maharshi, what is this place? It looks like a ashram, but it looks like abandoned. Nobody has lived here. And then the story that we know, that there was a stone or a statue made out of stone of a lady called Ahilya, whichever way you call it. And then he narrated the story, and he said to Prabhu Ramchandra ji that if you touch this statue with your feet, then Ahilya will become human again. She will come back into life. And then Ramji touched her with her feet, and she, from the statue form or from the stone form, she became human again. That's the story that we have heard. Now, there is no such reference in Valmiki Ramayana of her becoming a stone. Yes, there is a reference of Gautam Rishi's ashram, which was abandoned. Prabhu Ramji was passing by, he asked questions, Maharshi explained him everything. But the story was, and some of us know this story of Ahilya also, that Ahilya was wife of Rishi Gautam. Very pious lady, very pious couple. Once, and she was extremely beautiful. And she was so beautiful that Indra got attracted to him. And Indra wanted to unite with her. So once when Maharshi Gautam had left in the morning to take bath and his morning rituals, Indra came there in the disguise of Maharshi Gautam and asked Ahilya to unite with him. Now, Ahilya realized that he is not her husband. They also had a dialogue, and she clearly said, "You are not my husband." And she realized that it's Indra. Now, maybe it was kind of boosting her ego that I'm so beautiful that even king of gods is attracted to me. Or there might be any other reasons, but knowingly she agreed to unite with him. And that's when Gautamji came back and cursed both Indra and Ahalya. Now, if you uh, see the first verse there, it says Devaraja Kutuhalat. So she was also curious to unite with Indra, kind of boosting her ego. And then, after cursing Indra, what did Gautamji curse Ahilya? That is there in the lower part. Tatha Shaptva Savai Shakram Ahilyam Api Shaptavan. So I won't read the entire Sanskrit text, but he says you will live here at this place for 1,000 years. Again, the 1,000 does not mean exact 1,000 years or Sahasra Varsha. That means you'll spend lot of time here. How will you spend lot of time? Nirahara, you will not eat anything. Bhasma Shayini, you will just wear bhasma, the ashes on your body. Adrishya Sarva Bhutanam, you will not be visible to anybody. That does not mean she will become invisible, but that means don't go out and mix in the society and show your face or show yourself to anybody. Just stay isolated. So that was the curse, that you will stay isolated in this ashram till the effect of this papa has gone away from you, or till you get rid of effect of your papa. And how will that happen? Prabhu Ramchandra ji will come. His aura is so pure and so strong that just by being with him, touching his feet, your all the sins or the effect of your sins will be destroyed. And then I'll come back and we'll live together. So something like that he said, and then he left. The entire ashram left, and she stayed there alone. Uh, in that ashram, which was kind of abandoned at that time. And then Prabhu Ramachandra ji kind of washed her sins away. Now, where did this stone story came? Probably in some of the texts, the devotional texts, the shap of Maharshi Gautamji was translated that he told his wife Ahalya, Sheila Bhava. Sheila means not Shila, Sheila, the long or Dirgha Shi. Sheila means person with good character, the Sheelavan or Sheelavati or different words you must have heard of. So you become a person of good character, and then we can meet again. And that word Sheila probably got interpreted as Shila or Shila, which means stone. And then people started interpreting that as, okay, you will become stone, and Prabhu Ramchandraji will convert you back into human. Anytime we hear some such aspects which are scientifically or even practically impossible, human converting into stone, not possible, right? Or later on we'll see human converting into a deer, not possible. So we should start questioning such things and start to understand what it really could mean, or what are the facts behind it. So that is the story about Ahilya that we all know about, and what we the story we have heard versus what the fact is. Now in Ramayana there is one more story of another lady that after Sita was kidnapped or abducted, whatever words you use, while roaming into jungles, Sri Ramchandra met another lady. Her name was Shabari. Now, we have heard a lot of stories. Shabari was a Bhillin or Bhilla or Adivasi, whatever different words you must have heard. And when Prabhu Ramchandra ji went there, she bit every berry and made sure it is not sour, it's tasty, and then she offered it to Prabhu Ramchandra ji. Again, that is there is no such reference anywhere in Valmiki Ramayana. First of all, Shabari was not a Bhilla lady. She was a very educated woman. She was disciple of Matanga Rishi. And Matanga Rishi, before he passed away, before he died, before he left his body, He called his disciple, his devotee Shabri, and told Shabri that sometimes in future, Prabhu Ramchandra, who is son of Dasharatha, he is on a mission of destroying a lot of enemies. He is going to come here. You please worship him. You please offer him all the food and help him, support him. That is the purpose of your life. So there is also a story where Shabri wanted to also leave this body when um, her teacher was leaving his body, and that's when he said, "No, you cannot die right now. You still have purpose left in your life. You have to wait till uh, Prabhu Ramchandra ji comes, serve him, and that is your purpose. Before that, you cannot uh, leave this body." And also, uh, we won't go into details because all these stories are kind of linked, so it will be we'll run out of time. But when Prabhu Ramchandra ji uh, slayed Kabandha, Kabandha told Prabhu Ramchandra ji that on your way, please go and visit Shabri, and then she will guide you, or she will tell you next things. So that is the reason Prabhu Ramchandra ji came looking for Shabri, and Shabri also welcomed him, offered him puja and worshipped him, and so on and so forth. But there is no reference of her accumulating berries and flowers for years and years together, and biting every berry and giving that Shabri ke ber, what we have heard of. Those kind of references are not there anywhere. Of course, this story must have built to express the devotion and love to God, but from historic factual perspective, this this is nowhere mentioned in Ramayana. There is one more beautiful story that we have heard of. It's called Lakshman Rekha, and Lakshman Rekha has become like a very common saying, or when to indicate that we should not cross certain boundary, and to indicate that uh, Lakshman Rekha is often used as a metaphor or as a word, that this is a Lakshman Rekha. That means this is absolute boundary you should not cross. Now, if we look at Ramayan, there is no mention of Lakshman Rekha at all. Now, when we look at this text, I'm going to explain a little bit of what exactly happened. Again, I want to use a little bit of caution that there are certain things which are not so respectful about Mata Sita, but I'm just going to describe those as a factual text reference. Okay, no intent of disrespecting or disrespecting Mata Sita or anybody's devotion towards her. So what exactly happened is, we know the story that Sita Mata was sitting in the Parnakuti, or in that hut, and she saw a beautiful golden deer, and she wanted that deer. Now, there again we see the story that there was a Rakshas who converted himself into a deer. No, there is no such conversion of human into deer possible. He was like a actor kind of a person who was extremely good, and he probably pulled a skin of a deer or some cloth which looked like a deer skin and appeared there, or he showed his glimpse. He did not come in front. Otherwise, it would have been very obvious that it's not a real deer. But anyway, so Sitaji asked Prabhu Ramchandra ji to go and catch that deer. And after Prabhu Ramchandra ji left, few minutes or sometimes after that, they heard Mata Sita ji and Lakshman ji heard a big cry for help in Ram's voice, Prabhu Ramchandra ji's voice, calling Lakshman to come and help him. Now, when that happened, Lakshman was calm. He was cool. He knew that this is some trick. He knew that it is impossible for anybody to even hurt Prabhu Ramchandra ji, forget about killing him or capturing him or destroying him. It's just not possible. So he was calm. But Sita, being a wife, was very worried. And she asked Lakshman to go and help Prabhu Ramchandra ji. And Lakshman explained her that don't worry, it is not possible. Don't get carried away. This is some trick, right? So you can see that second verse there where he says, Vaidai, there is no doubt that anybody, Asura, Gandharva, God, or anybody can defeat Prabhu Ramchandra ji. So don't worry about it. He is safe. He will be back soon. Now, there was a lot of argument back and forth between both of them. And then, towards after that argument, when Lakshman did not agree to leave her alone and go, she made a very um bad allegation on Lakshman. She said, you want your brother to die so you can enjoy me. You want to get hold of me. That is why you want your brother to die. That is why you are not leaving. Now, this was very, very disturbing allegation. And that is something that Lakshmanji could not take it. He could not take it. You will find there are references in Ramayan where Lakshman had mentioned that I have not even seen Mata Sita ji, her full body. I have never seen her above her feet. So only thing I know is how her feet look. I don't even know how her face looks and so on. Even when they were searching for Mata Sita, there is a reference that her ear rings were found, and Prabhu Ramchandra ji asked, "Is it? Do you recognize these? Are these Mata Sita ji's?" And there also Lakshman said, "I have no idea because I have never seen up to her ears. I only have seen her feet, so I can only recognize her anklets." But anyway, so he was such a divine and pious person, and when Sitaji made such allegations, he had no choice but to leave. So he just left, and of course, he said, "Be safe, take care of yourself, don't go too far, or don't go away from the hut," things like that. But there is no Lakshman Rekha that he drew and said, "Okay, don't cross this line, otherwise you will be in trouble." There is no such reference. So that is again a story that was built. Again, probably the intent was to give a message of not crossing a boundary, but in actual Ramayana reference, there is no mention of Lakshman Rekha. This is going to be very interesting topic. The Hanuman and the Vaanar Sena. There are a lot of or everywhere we always hear, even the picture that you see here, you see whole bunch of monkeys around Prabhu Ramchandra ji and Lakshman ji, and in the back you also see um, one more bear, that is Jambavan or Jambuant, whatever, right? So there is a understanding or a misunderstanding that all these monkeys helped Prabhu Ramchandra. Again, if we read Ramayana carefully, there is no mention of Hanuman being a monkey or anybody for that matter. Of course, there is no direct reference that they were not monkeys, right? Because I never said that they are monkeys, so why should I clarify that they are not monkeys, right? So they are always referred as Vanaras or Kapi. So what is Vanara? Vana and Nara. So people who live in the jungle, or pretty much any creature that lives in the jungle, qualifies as Vanara. And Kapi is a different skin tone, like slightly dark and yellowish kind of a skin tone, that is Kapi. So everywhere they are referred as Vanaras or Kapis, but not as Markata. Markata is monkey. They are never referred as Markata. At the same time, there are descriptions about their tails. But there are also references of them removing their tails and keeping those away, which means that they were not actual monkeys, but they were probably like a tribe that appeared or that dressed like monkeys. And you will see a lot of even Western stories, even Native American stories, where different tribes had different appearances. They will dress up like monkeys, like goats, like foxes, and so on and so forth. So similarly, this whole Vanar Sena was probably part of a monkey tribe, and the Jambuan or Jambuant was a part of a bear tribe. So those were tribes that were not uh, actual animals or creatures as we are led to believe. And there are a lot of very, very strong references in Ramayana which indicate that, or which can help us understand that those were not animals or monkeys. Now, one of the reference I have given here, there are multiple references, but one of the reference is right in the beginning when uh, Sugriv sees Ram and Lakshman in his territory. He asks Hanuman to go and meet them and find out who they are. And that time he clearly instructs Hanuman not to go in your Vanara attire. Keep away your Vanara attire, remove your tail, remove your probably what are other mask or whatever he is wearing, and go as a Brahmin, go as a regular human being, approach them and go find out what they are and why they are here. So there are such references which give us clear indication. There are also descriptions about how beautiful Vanar women were. So obviously, it is not possible that a poet or a human will describe some monkey, female monkey being very beautiful and attractive or get attracted to her. That's not possible, not practical, right? So, but there are such descriptions about how beautiful they were and so on and so forth. There are descriptions about their palaces. There are descriptions about Sugriv um, getting drunk and getting carried away with all the luxuries that he has and defocusing from his mission of finding Sita. So there are several references where you can easily understand that these were not like real monkeys or animals, but those were humans, probably dressing up or being a part of a tribe of monkeys. This becomes very interesting because um, lot of times our kids especially ask us, how can monkeys do such and such things? How can monkeys speak? How can monkeys do whatever, right? So that is where it's important for us to understand what was the truth versus what the stories that are narrated. Also, after Prabhu Ramchandra ji interacts with Hanuman for the first time, he goes and talks to Lakshman, and there he clearly says that this person I met is really, really very talented. Only a person who is extremely learned, who has studied all the Veda and other granthas, can speak like this. So again, if he was monkey, it's hard to understand how monkeys would study all the Veda or can read and write and things like that, right? Even towards end, uh, after the war and everything is over, everybody is back in Ayodhya. Ramji asks Hanuman, "What do you think is relation between you and me?" And the answer that Hanuman gives is so beautiful, and I'll purposely give that as homework for those who are interested. If not, in the blog or that video comments later on, I'll mention purposely. But find out what answer he gives. That answer is so beautiful. You can't imagine any ordinary person even thinking of such answer or such aspects, right? So if you study Ramayana properly, you will get enough understanding that all these Vanaras were not monkeys, but they were humans. And same is the case with Jambavan, because they have talked about their lineage, their parents and grandparents and uh, entire past, and nowhere the past was not. The past was clearly their ancestors were clearly humans, because that is how it is described. One more topic is after they meet, after uh, Sugriv agrees to help, there is a story that they built a setu between India and Lanka. And there is a story, a popular story that two parts of that popular story basically, where when they started building the setu, the bridge, they took big stones and threw in the ocean, and obviously the stones started sinking. And now they are worried how to build the setu because the stones are sinking. Obviously, stones will sink, right? Or the big boulders or whatever they were carrying. And then they said that, okay, these Vanaras started writing Prabhu Ramchandraji's name on each stone. And when they started writing the name, the big stones started floating. Now, this is also to our uh, critical thinking, it's very difficult to digest. How can stones suddenly start floating just by writing the names? And then some people will argue that they had found some stones that do float on the water. Yes, there uh, can be some structures or some probably stones that can float on water, but not just because they wrote something on that. And that's the composition of that material which helps it float. So there are clear descriptions in the Ramayana. There was a architect, his name was Nala, and he was part of this Vaanar group. He was a good architect. He architected this bridge, and he kind of had entire brain power behind building that bridge. Now, people also argue that Nala built that bridge, so it should be called Nala Setu and not Rama Setu. Now, that is, in my opinion, not a very intelligent argument. And if I give an example of, just for the sake of discussion, Trump Tower. Trump Tower is a building that is built, we say it is built by Trump. But did Trump actually go and lay the bricks and build the building? No. It was his idea, it was his vision, it was his desire to build that building. And obviously, somebody else architected it, somebody else built it, somebody else decorated it, so on and so forth. But it is still called Trump Tower. We don't call it by the architect or the construction company who built it, right? So, same way here, yes, Nala was the architect, but it was built for Ram's mission. So it is Rama Setu. No doubt about that. And then there is a description about how this was built, how this Setu or the bridge was built. Obviously, the stones were sinking. So they took huge, gigantic trees and used those to build that bridge. Now, obviously, if you just take tree trunks, they will float away. If you take only stones, they will sink. So they combined these two, they tied these stones and tree trunks together with vines and used that to build the bridge. There is a clear description of this in Ramayana. So it is, the Setu was built, there is a description. Also, we also hear a story about a small squirrel coming and helping in building of that bridge. And there is also then a story that Prabhu Ramchandra ji patted her on her back, and that's why the squirrel has three lines on the back. But again, it's a good story. Again, to express or symbolize devotion, but there is no such mention in the uh, Valmiki Ramayana, the history text, anything of this sort, or anything of this nature. Then we hear one more story that when Ravan was defeated and he was about to die, he was lying on the ground about to die, Prabhu Ramchandraji asked Lakshman to go and learn few things from Ravan. Ravan, yes, he was a Rakshas, Asur, but he was extremely talented. He was a, one of the best devotees of Lord Shankar, and really talented person. But of course, his talents and powers he used for wrong purpose, right? That's why he was called Asura. But was there something for Lakshman to learn from Ravan? Maybe there was. Maybe there was nothing. But there is no mention of Prabhu Ramachandraji asking Lakshman to go and learn from Ravan. There is no such reference in um, Ramayana. Okay. So all this story again, probably this story was added to teach us that even if when somebody is more knowledgeable than you should be willing to learn from him or her, even if he is your enemy, right? Or even if he is a bad person in other contexts, but he has knowledge, higher knowledge than you in specific context, then you should learn from him. Probably that was the message somebody tried to deliver, and then how to deliver that message. So you tie it to some story. In the story format, it is very easy to communicate the information. And then if you tie it to some devotional aspects, it's even easier for that story to become accepted and people learning from it. So that probably was the intent behind many of these stories, but there is no direct mention about Ram asking Lakshman to go and learn from Ravan. So of course, if you look at overall Ramayana, there are a lot of it is a series of stories. Basically, it's a Itihasa Grantha. So Itihas is different incidents and events that happened are documented in sequential manner. Ramayana is also probably the first Mahakavya, because the entire stories or the entire Grantha is in poetic format. In Chanda format, it is documented or written, right? So that is one of the first epics, one of the first songs, so to say, written, and the first history reference grantha or a reference text that we accept in our tradition. So there are these are some of the things that we talked about, things that are taught to us, things that are stories that we have heard, and we just tried to take an attempt of understanding in the context of Valmiki Ramayana, what is the stories that we hear and what is something that is described in Ramayana. And of course, we can keep going on and on. There are a lot of stories about Hanuman. There is a lot of stories about Ravan. There are a lot of stories of pretty much every other thing, where the original story was little different than what actually happened. But this was just an attempt to help us educate against those facts, with no intention of disrespecting or hurting anybody's emotions. But in certain cases, it becomes difficult for us to answer certain things to our kids or even to people from other faiths and belief systems that challenge us, right? How can human convert into a deer or a stone, and a lot of such stories. So this was an attempt to help us clarify some of those aspects and bring out the stories that are really documented in Valmiki Ramayana. So with that, that's pretty much what I wanted to uh, communicate. We will take few questions. We have another maybe 10 minutes. And I see Prasadji has raised his hand. So Prasadji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Parag. Appreciate your talk. The clarifications, very systematic, step-by-step clarifications were great. I have one, always bothers me this question about Sita, right? From childhood, she has been, born of earth and all that. That's one story. And second is she was very well educated. She even lifted the Lord Shiva's bow when she was a young girl.
Right.
And after that, her role became, as far as the portrayal goes, following Ram, this love story, and me, koi mujhe bachao, that type of role she constantly played. But I believe, Sita was, well groomed, She came from from a family of kings. She was a princess. She was born as an administrator. She had all kinds of qualities, and I'm thinking, was there a bigger role Sita played in the Ramayana, or was there a strategy when Sita went to Ravan's straight to his house, as a strategy and to help out Ram win the battle?
So this is not a real direct answer, Prasadji. It's a very good question. The whole series of incidents in the Ramayana happened for a reason, right? There was a bigger reason of destroying the bad or evil in the society which was there at that time, and majoritarily Ravan and his influence, right? So even if we say his mother, how can she ask him to leave and go in the forest, stepmother, that she was not a bad person. There are references that she was probably as good as his real mother. She loved Ram just like she loved Bharat, but then still she asked, and that again there was a purpose behind why it happened, and it always gets uncovered later. But coming back to your question, uh, Sitaji was probably capable of destroying Ravan herself. And she had actually told, if you touch me, you will be burned, you will burn. She has kind of cursed him. Right? Now, why did she not take any action? Uh, I don't know, honestly. One of the potential reasons is, had she done something, it would have been a dark spot in Prabhu Ramchandraji's character, that he could not even save his own wife. What are you talking about him protecting the society and his citizens and all that, right? So she wanted her husband to prove his capabilities or uh, fulfill his duties. It is duty of a husband to uh, take care of and protect the wife. So she wanted to give him opportunity to prove himself, was probably one of the reasons. There can be something else also, but in my interpretation, that's probably the reason why she uh, let Prabhu Ramchandraji come and rescue her and destroy Ravan.
Paragji, there's a question about the Dhobi incident, whether it comes in the Valmiki Ramayana.
So there is a Uttarakhand, and Uttarakhand is a little bit questionable if it was really uh, is it part of Valmiki Ramayana or not. The Valmiki Ramayana ends after Prabhu Ramchandraji becomes king, returns to Ayodhya and becomes king. And then Uttarakhand, a lot of people believe was kind of written later on. But in Uttarakhand, yes, there is a story about Dhobi and Sitaji going through Agni Pariksha.
There is another question which is not related to it. It's someone has asked whether the Ramayana happened first or the Mahabharata.
I think that's a very obvious question. With every incident, every evidence, Ramayana happened before Mahabharata. And if you are specifically interested in dating, I will suggest that you look up Indic channel for video by Nilesh Okji, and you will get a lot of answers in that context. Yes, Prasadji.
Sorry, it's me again. So, Jatayu, character of Jatayu with wings. What is it all about?
Again, if you read the Jatayu story, he clearly tells everything about his ancestors, and all his ancestors are human. So again, it is not a bird, it is a human in a bird tribe. And a bird tribe, obviously being a bird, like monkey tribe, they used to put a tail. The bird tribe used to put feathers on their body or things like that. So definitely he was not a bird, he was a human, yeah, from the bird tribe. Otherwise, it's very simple to uh, it's very difficult to imagine how and why a bird would attack a human who is just because he's carrying some other woman. And how would he talk to Prabhu Ramchandraji and explain him what happened? So again, he was a tribal person with eagle family or whatever, that bird family or bird tribe.
There's another question in the chat. It says, is it possible that the Vaanar and other tribes had all the accessories like tail to be used as defense weapons?
Yes, yes. And there are some interpretations actually, and I won't authoritatively comment on that. You can do your own research. But yes, there are references or people have interpreted that those were not just ornaments as a tail, but those were actually weapons. Uh, there is some explanation by Dr. Vartak that it was actually a weapon or an instrument that could even help them fly. So those kind of analysis is done by different people. But again, my authority on that subject is limited. I have not done a deep research on that, so I can't authoritatively comment on that.
Also, what about the concept of Vimana, Pushpak Vimana, when Ram came back from Lanka to Ayodhya? So, is it just a theoretical concept, or is it something possible?
It is not a imaginary story. It is a factual story. It is described in Valmiki Ramayana. And the reason that you can believe that it is a real story or the real fact is there is a description of from the time Ram Parivar left Lanka sitting in Pushpak Viman and came to Ayodhya. What all things Sitaji has described later on, what all things she saw on the ground from the Vimana. And there is also a description about how much time it took for them to fly from Lanka to Ayodhya. And if you look at both those aspects, it is very clear that somebody who was really up in the air could only see what is there on the earth and describe it in that way. And also the time it took kind of matches how much time it would take to fly from Lanka to Ayodhya. So yes, it was not a myth, it is described there. And of course there are people even I think on Indic channel itself there was a talk on Vimana Shastra by a lady, I forgot her name, but she is an aeronautic engineer.
Sri Rekha, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, her talk is there on Indic channel, so you can go through that. So she has also captured some uh, mechanical kind of incidents or evidences to show that the Viman Shastra did exist in our history.
Dipankar ji, please ask your question.
Namaste, Parag ji. My basic question is, uh, for, even Ramchandra is projected as a Superman. Is that so, or if it is Itihasa, can that be true?
So it really depends on how you describe a Superman, right? If you are looking at a Superman being like a movie character of current generation Superman, then no, that is not what it is. But uh, if I don't know if you all know, but there is something called siddhis. There are 8 siddhis that a human can acquire, and which are, for lack of better words, mystic powers. You can do things that are really impossible or difficult for a common person to do. So yes, Prabhu Ramchandra ji had acquired a lot of siddhis. Hanuman ji had acquired all the siddhis. Also, because of his nature, he had a very strong and pure body, pure mind, which had developed a very strong aura. Now, aura is something that is becoming very common and a topic of research in the current generation or current days. You will see a lot of research being done on aura and how positive aura affects other people positively and negative aura affects negatively and so on and so forth. So I'm sure Prabhu Ramchandra ji had a very, very strong, very positive aura. And obviously he had a lot of talent, lot of strength and siddhis. So combination of all those things.
We'll take one last question from the chat. Somebody is asking if there is a reference of Ram Rajya in Valmiki Ramayana.
I don't know what the question is, but yes, obviously there is a reference, because after the victory over Ravan, Prabhu Ramchandra ji came back to Ayodhya and he did rule Ayodhya. So, is that the question, or are you asking something else?
I think he's referring to like Ram Rajya, like the ideal Rajya and all that.
Oh,
What
yes,
we talk
yes.
about now.
So little bit elaboration of that is in Uttarakhand. Again, authenticity of Uttarakhand is little bit questionable. But yes, in Uttarakhand there is a reference that in Ram Rajya it was so well established that there were no robberies, there were no stealing, there was no sickness, no illness. All those kind of things existed in Ramarajya. So in Uttarakhand there is a reference and some explanation or description about that.
Okay, Paragji, we have just shy of 1 hour now, and we got a lot of questions. If anyone has more questions, you can see Paragji's email address on the screen. You can mail him any other queries. I'm sure he would be glad to answer your queries. And Paragji, thank you very much for this eye-opening presentation, and we look forward to listening from you again. Dhanyavad, and dhanyavad everyone for attending the presentation.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.